Good evening.
Good evening.
This is Wallace Gator Bradley. And first off, as always, I'd like to say to God be the glory. And I want to make a personal appeal, or should I say, make you all aware that this show is being brought to you by none other than the chairman of United Peace, Inc., who happens to be my wife. She also is a great producer, a good director, and she tells me what to do. And without further ado, our special guest is here today. As y'all know, there's a lot of things that's been happening in Chicago, but one of the most important things is that there's an election coming up February 26th. And it's coming so fast that even the Board of Elections is saying they may have to delay the early voting. So for those who don't know who this charming lady is, let her introduce herself to you, as well as her platform and the issues that's more important than what a lot of people are putting out there to distract you.
Well, thank you,
President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to our host for his willingness to give me an opportunity to talk to the voters of Chicago. You know, I'm a teacher by profession. I spent 19 years in the city council. I was a founder of the Progressive Caucus.
Correct.
I was a supporter of every single affordable housing and living wage ordinance that came before the body. I was one of 5 people who did not vote for the parking meter sale. I spent a lot of time in the city council trying to build up the communities that I served and trying to serve the people of the city of Chicago through legislation. For the last 8 years, I've been president of the county.
Correct.
And we've worked very hard on both criminal justice, and I know that you're aware of that.
Yes, because I've been to a lot of the open door forums that you had for the public to sit at the table and give their ideas. And that was one of the things that led to you reaching out to all the interested bodies within county to come up with a plan to help with the county jail piece about the bonding.
Right. So one of the focuses we've made is criminal justice reform, as you're well aware.
Right. And
bond court reform. Now, when I came into office, 2/3 of the people who came into bond court got a cash bond.
Correct.
So basically the system was biased against poor people.
Correct.
Okay, because it wasn't a question of how serious the crime you committed or you were accused of committing. It was a question of whether or not you could pay your bond.
Could pay your bond, correct.
Right. So when I came into office, 2/3 of the people who came into bond court got a cash bond. And now 2/3 are released on their own recognizance or on electronic monitoring. And that means that instead of having 10,000 people in the jail on a daily basis, we have less than 6,000.
Correct.
And lots of people who were accused of nonviolent crimes and spent time in jail because they couldn't pay their bond are now out in the community, going to work, going to school, supporting their families.
You know, one of the most important things, some people don't see it or realize it, it shows your manageable skills in terms of county budget. What I mean by that, an individual who can make $100 bond, just being hypothetical, $100 bond, and he's there for at least 30 days because he can't make $100 bond. The county has to pay upwards of about $100 a day to feed.
Yes, more than $100 a day.
Okay.
So basically, we're spending, $3,000 on the person because they can't pay a $100 bond.
Right.
So we worked very hard on changes in bond court with the chief judge, the sheriff, the state's attorney, the public defender, the clerk of the court. I have to give them all credit,
right,
particularly the chief judge, because he told judges in bond court that the kind of default position should be that the person, if accused of a nonviolent crime, should
correct,
be released, rather than held in jail with a cash bond.
Correct.
So I'm very grateful for that. And what we've seen, as I said, is a dramatic reduction in the number of people in jail. And let me just say, our jails are full of poor people.
Right,
you know
correct.
Poor black and brown people.
Correct.
I always say the jails are at the intersection of racism and poverty.
It is. And I always call you Madam President, because I haven't heard President woman.
Thank you.
But,
Madam President's fine.
Right, okay. The most important thing, I've watched your growth from an alderman to the county board president. And a lot of people come to me because there's a lot of people in the community, they feel that you are the people's champion because you are purposely focused and you're positioned. And I say that to say this. They say for you to have been an alderman for 19 years, and they see themselves as an alderman sitting there. And one of the things I'm sure every alderman has said this within their mind, if I was mayor, I could do this. You follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
And everyone, all the aldermen know that being an alderman is like you are a mayor for the area that you're responsible for.
Your ward.
Your ward. Now that the mayoral race is in full swing, there's a lot of things that they hit the paper. A lot of people realizing when you made the statement about police superintendent, you may change. You as a mayor have a right, all those running for mayor have a right to bring in whoever they want to be the police superintendent. And you let it be known that you're still thinking about Miss Jackson, that's the school person. And everyone know every mayor has a right to do that. But one of the most important things is what has happened with Alderman Burke. You know, he's a fine gentleman to me, but what happened is happened. And he still has to have his day in court. But what gets me, and I guess that's the occupational hazard for being the front runner.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There are challenges to being the front runner.
Right. If it's a powdered donut, they gonna say the powder that falls the donut is your fault,
That's
regardless
right.
that you went to Dunkin' Donut.
That's right.
You know, one of the things that I love about you and the people within the community love about you is that you don't run away from a fight. You don't hide anything. When you in it, you don't let everybody know why you in it. You know what I mean? So if you wanna
Sure.
speak on that.
I was appalled and disturbed by the allegations that Alderman Burke extorted money and tried to extort legal business from a member of his community. I was appalled. Let me just say, you know, I have worked very closely with Ann Burke over the last 8
Yes, I know.
years, and she has been a champion of criminal justice
reform. Correct.
You know?
Correct.
I will tell you that when I was in the city council, the Alderman Burke and I did not have a really good relationship.
Correct.
We were kind of on opposite sides.
Right.
And my connection to the family really came as a result of my work with Ann Burke around criminal justice reform.
Right.
And you know, let me talk about that for a minute. I've
Right.
made police accountability a real
Yes, you have.
cornerstone of my campaign. You know, when the mayor and the state's attorney and the police superintendent were all saying, you know, that Laquan McDonald lunged at the officers, putting out a false narrative, covering up what actually happened to Laquan McDonald, I used the power of my office to get the autopsy report
Yes, you
released,
did. Yes, you did.
which showed that Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times, 9 times in the back. 16 times,
Right.
9 times
Yes,
in
you
the back.
did.
And the day before Thanksgiving in 2015, when the court ordered the release of the videotape, I said the superintendent ought to be fired.
Correct. Yes, you did.
I said the superintendent ought to be fired. And then I worked very hard for Kim Fox to be state's attorney because Anita Alvarez was part of the cover-up of what happened to
Correct.
Laquan McDonald.
Correct.
So I have been a champion of transparency
Yes, you have.
and police accountability
Yes, you have.
throughout my tenure as both alderman and president of the county board.
That is correct. You know, and it's wild because it's almost like me out there explaining you to the people. Then they say, you know, you're right. And you know, all I say is this: you're running because by law you can. The people feel that you're running, those that support you in the tens of thousands. I want you
Thank you.
to know that. I'm seeing the feedback that I be getting back from my page. And just for transparency, I am a supporter of Madam President to be the mayor because I'm of the opinion that she's purposely focused and she's positioned. And when you look at all the other candidates, none of them can equal up to you on your worst day. Yeah, I'm just being 100%. Just everyone should know and look at it, because even when I hear them talking about the sugar tax, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I was there and saw what was happening. I knew the importance was the services that had to be paid
with the money.
with the money. I understood that the money that you were trying to get in the revenue was to pay the individuals to provide those services. I also understood that when they voted it down or whatever it is, they didn't have an alternative to bring the revenue, and they had to come back to you to do what you told them was what was going to happen. That was the firing or release of individuals.
That's right. We eliminated 1,000 people.
Right.
1,000 positions, we had to lay off people.
Right.
So, and our money goes to healthcare,
Right.
to the health and hospital system, and to criminal justice reform. That's where 88%, almost 90% of our money goes. Half of it goes to healthcare, half of it, 38%, goes to the criminal justice system. And without the revenue, we had to make cuts.
Right, correct.
And that was a real challenge. And you're right, when it was repealed, there was no other source of revenue, and so there we were in a position where we had to eliminate positions and lay off people.
Right. That goes back to what I was saying earlier. Carl, I see you. I want to make one statement. That's what I said. An individual that has never been in a position to manage, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
A leader of the city or of the city is what we're talking about now, have to make hard choices. For lack of a better phrase, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Hard choices.
Hard choices.
That's the definition
That's the
of the job.
definition. That's what it is. A lot of the individuals that's running against you haven't even entertained the thought of being able to make the hard choices, because none of them said, I am willing to make the hard choice. You feel what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Caller, could you please state your name? And you know this opinionated show, your opinion is respected. So state your name.
Oh, okay. Hey, Gator, my name is Steve.
Hey, Steve, how you doing, sir?
President, I'm
Good
doing
evening.
Great. Hey, Madam President, I met you many years ago. Not the University of Chicago, Doctors Hospital. This is when you was alderman. And I always admired you, the way that you stood up. But I'm going to say just two quick things real quick. I think it should be a law or something of not that many people running for office. It's just ridiculous. I guess it could be 25 people. If it ain't no law, anybody and everybody could run. And I think that's unfair. It takes away a lot of things that could be given to someone else, such as you. And Gator,
Yes, sir.
real quick, I've been waiting for you to come back on. I remember the last time you had something in the newspaper about let's let Jeff get out. It could help run these streets. Gator, I believe that, but let me tell you, that was 10 or 15 years ago. That's when that should have happened. He could have helped control these streets with the gangs then. Now I think it's just way out of control. It's not like what it used to be.
Right, Steve, I agree with you. In that article, I was saying, as you know, I'm a God-fearing man, 'cause I know how God changed my life around. And that is, I have acquired the fear of God. And one thing I know, if law enforcement or those that have the responsibility to free Larry and the criminals see where law enforcement and individuals who once were criminals are working together to help eradicate antisocial behavior, that sets a real fear within the community, because everyone is coming together to make things right. And I appreciate you for calling, and like I say, I respect and honor your opinion. And one of the things is this, to all the rest of the voters that's out there, and I understand what Steve is saying, But one thing for sure, a lot of African Americans that I've read about have died for us to have the right to vote. And anybody that want to run for office has the right to run for office. You follow what I'm saying? If it's 92, if it's 2, okay? And again, if it was 92, there's only one individual that's perfectly focused and positioned to be the next mayor of the city of Chicago, and I'm blessed by God to have her on my show, and it's her.
Thank you.
You know, anything else you want to?
Well, whenever I talk about the race for mayor,
Yes.
I talk about my vision for the city. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a
Correct.
teacher. My grandchildren are in Chicago public schools, and we've got to have strong schools in every neighborhood.
Correct.
And the problem we've got now is that the good schools are not evenly distributed across the city. If you live in a privileged community, you're more likely to have good neighborhood
Right.
schools. And they've got to be public schools.
That's
because
right, that's
the
right.
charter schools don't accept every kid. We've got to
Correct.
have good schools that every kid has access
Correct.
to. We also have to have economic development in our communities. When I was alderman, we built 1,500 units of housing.
Sure did.
Lots of affordable housing,
Sure
affordable
did.
rental housing. And we've got to build back up neighborhoods that have been struggling. And we've got to work on our commercial strips to be sure that they're vital. And we've got to bring jobs into the neighborhoods. So
Right.
that economic development is the second big thing I talk about. And the third thing is police accountability.
Correct.
And it's not just the Laquan McDonald case. It's the Department of Justice report that said we need better supervision of officers on the street.
And that's
More
that decree that they're speaking about.
That's right, the
Correct.
Department of Justice decree, consent decree. So more supervision of officers on the street and better investment in training as well. We can't think, even if we train our officers better and they're better supervised, that police activity alone is going to solve the violence in our communities.
Correct.
The communities that have a lot of violence have high unemployment. They have
No hope.
no hope. Schools closed
Right.
or under-resourced. Low levels of educational attainment. We've got to look holistically at those neighborhoods and figure out how we're going to try to address the challenges that they face, and not think that more policing is going to solve the problem alone. It won't.
It won't. One of the things that's happening in Washington, D.C., I'm glad that the Democratic Party, by the grace of God, ended up back
And
in
in the
control.
House, yeah.
And there's a thing that's known as the opportunity zones or something
Right.
that Trump son-in-law and them have put together because they thought they were going to keep control.
Right.
It's the wonderful thing, too, we got a new governor. Okay,
We're
that's
very-
just as
we're very-
passionate
we're very,
about the things that you're talking about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I see Governor J.B. Pritzker and his administration being an asset across the whole state, especially in the city of Chicago, because we're in Chicago.
Right.
You know what I mean? And all those things coming together, and I read in the paper the other day where the fraternal police, the appeal court said they didn't have a right to intervene
In the decree.
in the decree. So there's a lot of things that's working, people, and I'm saying this. At the end of the day, whether you agree with Toni or not, you was able to agree or disagree because of the 27 years plus service. Wow.
That's right.
27 years plus service of seeing her doing something within government, and you have seen none of that from the others. Caller, could you please state your name, voice your opinion, because your opinion will be respected and honored on this show. Caller?
Hi, this is Alex Smith. I'm a former teacher.
Good
and
evening.
I have
Hey,
a
good
question
evening.
for Toni. My question is, as a former teacher, I'm concerned about charter schools, and I wanted to know what Toni's stance was on charter schools.
Sure. What I've said is we ought to have a moratorium on new charter schools, and that we ought to hold the charter schools accountable for performance and operations and educational achievement in the same way that we hold Chicago public schools accountable. And I don't believe that's been done effectively in the past. And the thing you have to remember is charter schools were advertised as a way of providing new educational models for our public schools. But that's not what happened. The charter schools became competitors to our neighborhood public schools. And that has led to disruption in the system, and resources that should go to our neighborhood public schools go to charters. So what I've said is we should have a moratorium on charters, and we ought to look carefully at their performance and their operations in the same way we do at Chicago Public Schools, because there's some of them that are doing well and some of them that are not doing well, and we shouldn't be supporting ineffective, poorly performing charter schools any more than we should be protecting CPS schools that aren't doing well. And let me just say, if we provide our neighborhood public schools with the proper resources, our kids can perform. And the challenges we face in many neighborhoods are that our local public schools are under-resourced.
You know, one thing I want to say, I'm glad I got my show. With your campaign, I know when you start buying airtime and all of that, coming up. There's a new station that deals with the steppers and the line dancers and the skaters. Cause you know Juliana, she know about it. Everybody know about it, and it's 95.1. And I will get all that information to your staff so that everybody wants to be a part. There's so many people that want to volunteer to come to your campaign. So could you let our listening audience and our viewing audience, because some of them are watching it on their phones and their apps, because this is streamed live.
Sure.
Give them the information where they can come to your office.
Sure. Toni for Chicago is our website, Toni for Chicago. And you can find out information about volunteering. We also have a neighborhood office in the 4th Ward, where the phone number is 773-288-0000, 773-288-0000. So there are lots of opportunities to
And
to
the
volunteer.
office in the 4th Ward, what's the address?
1516 East 53rd Street.
By Valord.
It's up above Valord. 1516 East 53rd Street is our office in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And we have an office downtown at 420 North Wabash.
So, Darlene Johnson, you've been asking, how can you get in? Because you want to fit in and you want to volunteer to be with Toni. I done called you out. You got the information. I'm going to give it to you again when I see you tonight. So, everyone, you can't sit back and say, rung. It's your chance. You can't hold the individual responsible if you don't help them to get there, and then come and add your 2 cents to the agenda or the platform that they have. It don't work right if you don't put none in to make it work right. Caller, could you please state your name, voice your opinion? Caller?
Hi, my name is Sharon, and I just have a question about the president's involvement with Laquan McDonald's, case and the video.
Sure. Well, let me just say, I was approached by a journalist from the Invisible Institute. His name is Jamie Calvin. They have done a lot of work on police accountability. And Jamie asked me for the autopsy report for Laquan McDonald, because he and other advocates were concerned about the police narrative about Laquan McDonald's death. And the state's attorney had asked for an extra look at the toxology reports, what chemicals might have been in Laquan McDonald's system when he passed away. And so there was a delay in the autopsy report. As soon as it was available, I made it publicly available to Jamie Calvin and the Invisible Institute, and they used that autopsy report in their efforts to try to get the videotapes released.
Correct.
That showed what happened on that night in 2014. So I am very grateful to Jamie Calvin for bringing this issue to my attention, and as soon as we had the autopsy report, we made it public.
Sure did.
So that it was a basis for the further court action to get the videotapes released and to show what really happened that night. Because the police narrative, if you'll recall, was Laquan McDonald lunged at the officers and he was shot. And that, of course, is not what happened. What you saw on the videotape was him sort of stumbling away from the officers and shot in the back.
Right. And one of the things is this. Behind the trial that had just happened and the jury came down and they found Mr. Van Dyke guilty, and all the evidence came out, and we saw to the great extent that they would go to try to make you feel that what you saw, you didn't see it. Got a minute to go. Again, I
Let me
didn't
just say,
name...
there was a, it seems to me, it's quite clear, there was a conscious effort on the part of the mayor, the
Right.
state's attorney, and the police superintendent to cover up what happened.
Correct. Before we get out of here, I think I got 20 seconds left. I want to let you know that woman's name that I was talking about. That's not the other woman in my life. That's my wife, and her name is Miss Terry Marsh. I know y'all heard that all the time. And she ain't gave me a dime, but she do feed me. And with that, I want to say, Madam
Thank you very
President,
much.
thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me on your program. I'm grateful.
And I'm overly grateful. And so is my viewing audience. With that, I want to say before I wrap it up, to God be the glory. Don't choke, vote, and vote for Toni. Thank you.
Thank you very much.